I'm having a little audio difficulties. So if you can't hear me, just let me know. Let's call the boards to order. Let's start with Pen 1.
Thank you, Ken. Calling Pen 1 board to order. Claudio Campuzano.
Present.
Annalisa Kohler.
Present.
Jeff Noodleman.
Present.
And James Allison is present. We have a quorum. PJ Christopher is out today. Thank you.
Thank you. Pen 2.
This is Val Humble calling Pen 2 to order. Karen Myers.
I'm present. Is that working?
Yes, we hear you.
Thank you.
Is Mary Helen Kincaid up here?
Yes, I am. I'm present and I support Emily's making her life easier as opposed to harder.
Thank you. Leslie?
Leslie's present.
And is Kathy Kellen here?
Yes, Kathy Kellen here.
All present and accounted for. Pen 2 is in order.
All right, thank you very much. SDIC.
Yes, good morning. Tom Hansel present, calling SDIC board to order. Ken Anderson.
Ken Anderson's present.
Tammy Stephenson.
Present.
SDIC, you're ready to do some business.
Great, thank you. Calling MCDD to board to order. Ken Anderson's present.
Corky Collier's present.
Nancy present.
All right, and is Kenzie?
Present.
Great, our board is called to order. And we have an audio recording. I heard that voice come in, so we're good to go here. And any public testimony? Hearing none, we'll move on to item B or actually item C, contract approvals. Jim, you have anything for us?
Ben or James, are you guys ready to cover that one for me?
Sure.
Thank you, Jim.
Emily, I think you have you were able to distribute copies of the background information and a possible motion. So we had two contracts that we seek approval for. I think those were both MCDD contracts.
Emily, are you calling that up or are you going to describe it, Jim? It would be helpful to let him know. Sorry. Just want to clarify for everybody what we're waiting for.
I will read through the summary if you'd like.
Can I help? Because I'm so both of the contracts that we're seeking approval for today are contracts with the 4 drainage districts. It's just the ones that are with MCDB that are over the $100,000 threshold. The first contract is with Carpy and Clay, our federal lobbyist, and actually Julie is here with us and she's going to present on the wonderful work she does for us after we get through some of these early approvals that we need. The second is that's a 5-year contract. The second is with Cascadia Behavioral Healthcare, which they've been doing our outreach on the community, or the outreach for the houseless program that we've been running the last several years. And we believe in the near future, and really over the last few months, we've been engaging their services more to go out and interface with houseless community members to minimize that type of contact with our crew. And so we anticipate that we'll need to do more of that in the coming months and potentially years as we continue to work to prevent damage, improve safety for our crew, and the other issues that Jim has been talking to y'all about over the last several months. That contract, again, is with all 4 districts, but only MCD's portion is over the $100,000 threshold. And this will be a 3-year contract.
And remind me if these budget line items, if these are already approved budget line items, or are these additional?
Both are already approved.
All right. And so you need us to make a motion on this, MCPD? Okay. Do I have a motion on the first one, Carpia and Clay contract?
I'll move to approve and authorize the executive director or their designee to negotiate and sign a 5-year contract for personal services with Carpia and Clay Inc. for federal advocacy services up to $189,000 using a contract template reviewed and approved by legal counsel.
All right, do I have a second?
Second that.
All right, roll call vote. Ken Anderton votes aye. Kenzie?
Aye.
Corky?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Resolution passes. Let's move on to the Cascadia Behavioral Health. Do I have a motion?
I'll do that one. I move to approve and authorize the executive director or their designee to negotiate and sign a 3-year contract for personal services with Cascadia Behavioral Health Care, Inc. for mental health outreach services up to $136,973 using a contract template reviewed and approved by legal counsel.
And this is Corky. I'll second.
Okay, it looks like we have a motion and a second. Go through roll call vote. Nancy?
Aye.
Corky?
Aye.
Kenzie?
Aye.
Ken Anderton votes aye. Passes unanimously. Any other contract approvals?
That's it.
All right. Hey, we're making up time here. Sorry about that. Federal legislative update, item D on the agenda.
Yeah, I'm just going to do a really quick introduction here. I guess I should say my name for the record, Evan Mitchell, Public Affairs Manager for the districts. I have the great fortune of working with and getting to introduce Julie Minerva today. As we've discussed before, after Sunny Simpkins departed the agency, I stepped in and started doing a lot more of the federal advocacy work with Julie. And she is here to tell you about some of the work she's doing on our behalf in DC and how we intersect with the infrastructure package that we're all reading about in the news, and some of our efforts moving forward around the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers project. I could talk about Julie's background at length, but I will just leave it with she's a wonderful, wonderful lobbyist and a great person to work with, a great, advocate for us in DC, and has built really strong relationships with our congressional delegation. So we're incredibly lucky to have her on the team. So with that, Julie, you want to take it away?
Great. Thank you, Evan. And thank you all for making some time this morning for a federal update. I'm going to quickly share my screen here. Hopefully you can see that. Can everyone see my slides?
Yes. Looks good.
Good. All right.
Put it in presentation mode if you can.
Yeah, I'm just trying to do that. There we go. All right.
Julie, we're seeing your like presenter mode, not. I don't think we're seeing the right screen for you.
Okay, let's see here.
You can go up to display settings and then just switch it if you're using dual screens.
Yeah, let's see here. I'm showing on the wrong screen. My tech support just walked in. They're seeing my presenter mode, not this mode.
Stop the share.
I'm gonna quickly stop sharing here. And as my tech support is helping me, I'm gonna go ahead and launch into the presentation here in the real world. I'll move my camera up. Okay, all right, here we go. This is kind of what we do on Capitol Hill, as you guys know, when we used to walk the halls and move from room to room in these meetings here. So first, I really want to say congratulations to everyone. You had a significant milestone happen in August with the signing of your chief's report, and you did that in 3 years with $3 million federal, and that met the requirements of the Corps' SMART planning process, and not everybody can do that. We are seeing countless non-federal sponsors across the country not be able to meet the 3-year timeframe, and they're asking for extensions and waivers and all sorts of things. So really give yourselves a round of congratulations on that part, because that is a significant milestone and incredibly impressive, and it puts your best foot forward as we work towards the next phase of things here. So just to revisit that, and I see some familiar faces on the screen, and certainly Corky has walked the halls with us countless times. And you know, when we got the feasibility study started under the Balanced Budget Act of 2018, you were one of 38 studies to get started. And based on a recent conversation I had with Corps headquarters, it sounds like only 24 of those studies are ready to move forward in the WRDA 2022 bill. So it'll still be incredibly competitive, but I just wanted to give you guys the bigger context of how you fit into all of the Civil Works priorities, and just let you know that all of your hard work is paying off. That's hard work day in and day out with the congressional delegation, hard work day in, day out with the Corps of Engineers at the district, division, and headquarters level. And there's lots of things that we have been doing to not only prepare for these milestones, but also to help the delegation work through what their next steps need to be in this process. So anyways, it's always nice to start with some good news there before I dive into the rest of what's going on here in Washington, DC. And with that, I think, can you see my slides now? Oh, all right, 1 second for my tech support. What would we do without them? Can you see that? Are you able to see the slides?
Yes, and then see if you present them, if we get the right screen.
There we go. Thank you. Thank you. Round of applause for my husband. So I want to, let me switch back my camera here. Apologies for the technical issues. Good thing I was trained as a dancer and used to moving things around on the stage in real time. So I really want to start off here by giving you a quick lay of the land of what's happening in Washington. And then we're going to spend most of the time on the presentation talking about the next steps here that we need to be working on to move your study from authorized chief's report to a constructed and funded project. So I know you've all seen the news that the big news in DC is that we are very close to reaching an agreement on the president's Build Back Better agenda. This is 2 parts. It's the infrastructure side of things and then the social services side of things. So the infrastructure bill is something that moved through Congress in early August, and the reconciliation side is what's still being negotiated. And this morning, the president even paid a visit up to Capitol Hill to the House Democratic Caucus to make a last-minute plea for the passage of the infrastructure bill and the agreement on a framework before he leaves for some climate negotiations in Glasgow this weekend. So this is moving as we talk, and maybe I'll even get a text from a friend or 2 up on the Hill letting me know where things are breaking. But as you can see, it's been a long road for the infrastructure development, and I think we're really close to the final side here. But what I want to point out to you as it relates to the districts is that within the infrastructure package, there is just north of $16 billion for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. There's funding in every category that helps to advance projects. And in particular, there's $150 million in here for general investigations, which is something that the districts could use for the study. And certainly, having a lot of funding in there for construction helps to move projects through the pipeline. So this is a very healthy indication that Congress wants to see more funding for the Corps and help to break through a backlog that we have with the Corps of Engineers right now, which is $109 billion in authorized but unfunded projects. Also notable this year for the FY22 appropriations process is the return of earmarks. We did not have an earmark request this year because we were still finalizing the study, but going forward, this is something that we're going to be really actively competing in. So this is notable because it has been 10 years since Congress has had the ability to earmark projects, and it opens up one more path for the districts to pursue funding for these levy improvements. This is just a quick breakdown, only just to show that both the House and Senate really support the Corps of Engineers. We have another year of record level funding for the Corps. This is one piece of the federal government that really does have both bipartisan and bicameral support. And as you know from seeing the news, this is not happening in every place in DC. So within the federal funding framework, we're going to be working on two paths for the annual appropriations process. The first one is we're going to try to get into the president's budget. That's always the best place to start. If for some reason we are unable to do so, we will work on either an earmark path or a work plan path. So just know that when we talk about the need for funding for this project, we'll be talking about it in a general sense, but we will be meeting with all of the stakeholders within the administration and within Congress so that either path will hopefully yield some success for the project. The other thing that's happening in DC right now is the development of the Water Resources Development Act of 2022. This is pretty exciting because this is the vehicle that will provide an authorization, a construction authorization for your chief's report. We expect that Congress will pass this before the end of calendar 2022. And right now we are in the process of preparing forms for both Senators Wyden and Merkley to submit to the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee. In early calendar 2022, we expect that we'll go through a similar exercise with our congressional delegation over in the House. And of course, Congressman Blumenauer has been our champion there. So here's the next steps. And this is really where I wanted to spend some time so that I can leave plenty of time for Q&A on your side of things. But as you know, you've got a really great competitive chiefs report. But as I mentioned, there are $109 billion worth of Corps of Engineers projects in the backlog. So we know that everything that you did at the local level to show unity and support to the Corps of Engineers needs to continue for these next steps. So we're going to need the same group of stakeholders that weighed in to get the feasibility started in FY18 to continue with the support to get authorized in the Water Resources Development Act. We're going to need that continued support to seek funding in either the infrastructure package or an annual appropriations bill. And we're going to need their support as well to try to get included in the president's budget. So, while the Corps of Engineers has a large portfolio of projects that they're working on, Corps headquarters out here that makes a lot of the decisions relies on both the districts and the divisions to make decisions. And your partnerships with the divisions and districts are really, really helpful. They have been a big champion for you in this process, but they will be looking for indications of project readiness to advance some funding for the project. And some of the things that they look for is not only having the local share on hand or within reach, but also making sure that there is a lot of agreement on the project, because the Corps is really sensitive to controversy, and they want to make sure that if they are moving forward with a project recommendation, that it is a project that has strong support, because once you start something, you want to finish something. So what we've been doing within Congress in the last year is spending a lot of time with the congressional delegation, briefing them on where we were in the project feasibility study so that we could prepare them for these next steps. We did a round of virtual meetings in October, and we individually met with all members of the congressional delegation as well as with Corps headquarters. We then followed up in the spring with a briefing on the chief's report to give everybody a better idea of how close we were to getting ready for our chief's report to be final, which was really quite exciting. And that was sort of fun too, because since we're doing these things virtually, we were able to invite both DC-based staff of the congressional delegation with the Oregon-based staff for the congressional delegation. And that's not something you always get to do, to have DC and local folks in the same room for the briefing. So that was really, really instructive, and I think something that we will continue forward as we move with this project. So looking out long-term, because I've spent a lot of time talking about the Corps of Engineers, and that's because this is the principal agency to fund your levee improvements. But you've certainly heard this administration talk a lot about climate and equity. Those are chief principles of President Biden. And so with the backdrop of climate and equity, we are seeing a whole of government approach to infrastructure resiliency. And we've really taken our cues to make sure that we are taking an all of government approach to what the districts are looking to achieve. So that not only means that we're advocating and tracking for funding for the Corps, but we're also looking at all of the other federal resources out there to support environmental proposals, to support ecosystem restoration, to support other elements of the region's priorities that may not be found within the Corps of Engineers mission or budget. We are tracking this so that we can share them with our stakeholders. And I'll just give you a couple of examples. In the FY22 pending transportation bill, there is a grant source for state DOTs to work on making sure that roadways and bridges don't flood as frequently when we have extreme weather events. So they're working on efforts to provide grants for permeable pavement or to raise bridges. And that's all really important for flood efforts because of course, those could be really key evacuation routes for your projects. We're also paying a lot of attention to what NOAA is doing with weather forecasting so that we can have the best data possible for the operation of your system. And we're also paying attention to a lot of the funds that are being provided for shorelines to make sure that if we can incorporate natural or nature-based infrastructure from other agencies, that we have the ability to do so. So lots of paperwork that I could send your way on how we're tracking these bills and things of that nature. But I just really did want to flag for you that while the Corps has been our focus, it is not the only focus here in DC. And we really do want to make sure that we share this information with our stakeholders so that a comprehensive approach to your levee safety issue is addressed. So with that, I threw a lot at you and I will stop and take questions.
Any questions from the group? That's a lot of great information, a lot of moving parts. Thank you, Jilly.
Julie, have we laid out adequately for you why this program is important from an equity as well as climate perspective?
You have certainly over the years, and Corky, what I will say to that is a lot of those talking points that you have used over the past several years kind of moved to the front of the conversation. So for any of the competitive grant opportunities that you will be applying for, those things will just take greater priority. So I think there's always an opportunity to refresh and revisit, but I think that's one area that you've been consistently strong on, and we'll just make sure that we modify it as appropriate for the new administration. So if you've got any ideas of things that you think that we need to talk about, I'm all ears because you always bring a lot of great insight to this discussion.
Sure, thanks.
I have a little bit of a question. I'm a neighborhood representative, so I'm going to say not, mm, not as high level as government jurisdictions, et cetera, and I'm on the Penn 2 board. Is there anything at like a neighborhood level? Because I heard you say about a comprehensive approach and not causing any, well, not causing, but FEMA being adverse or Army Corps of Engineers to a lot of disagreements. And that usually happens at the neighborhood level when people believe something should happen and they write their congressman and say, stop doing this, or we don't want to do it. Is there something at the neighborhood level that we could do to strengthen that, or advice from you of how best to handle that when it does? And I've been in community involvement for 15 years, so I know it will. Somebody will not like what's happening, or somebody and 3 friends. So I just wanted some advice on how maybe at a neighborhood level we could do that and keep people more in tune with a very complicated project.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's so important in this process. I think that constant communication can really help. When people feel like something is advancing without their input and they get a little nervous, they tend to raise questions or concerns. And so I think that the way that I'm walking you through the federal process out here and our next steps, it's helpful to walk the neighbors through what the next steps is and constantly remind them of the risks that you're looking to reduce. But overall, you have shown such a great show of support, starting with Levy Ready Columbia. And, you've really impressed a federal audience about how well you are able to bring diverse groups together and that you're able to have hard conversations and move on from them. So I think we just want to keep that up.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think it's continue to reinforce that a lot of the administration goals with renewables, a lot of the power comes through and is protected by the levy system in terms of sustainability, but also the economic engines of PDX with Portland International and all the different industry that's along the Columbia corridor. This levy system protects, so it's a great federal investment.
That is an excellent point and something Congress always likes to hear.
And the feds have billions of dollars of infrastructure too within the district, so they should be protecting it. Any other questions? This has been great. Thank you so much. All right. With that, Jilly, thank you so much. And we're going to move on to our next agenda item.
Appreciate it. Have a great day.
All right. Looks like we're on anything else on the federal legislative updates. We're good. Okay. Looks like we're on to item E, budget process update with Ben Rowe, and I don't think I've ever met Ben.
I'll jump in by saying we're really fortunate to have Ben. He's been on the job just over a month. Is that right, Ben?
That's right.
And has already produced some really great information for me and for our team, and I'm sure we'll do the same for you. So take it away, Ben.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. If you worked with Casey Short in the past, I'm the new Casey. Just a year or two younger, maybe. Sorry, now I'm having my own technical difficulties. All right. Can you guys see my slides?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. That's what I figured.
It wouldn't be a Zoom meeting without some technical challenges.
That's right. That's exactly right.
I've had some gremlins in my Zoom and Teams today, so.
Just bear with me. Okay. Are you seeing just my slides or my presenter view?
We see just your slides. You're good.
Okay, good. Wow, I've never had that much trouble. Good morning. Thank you for your time. Again, my name is Ben Rowe, Budget Manager. And today, I'd like to take the boards through a few things. We're going to talk about the budget calendar, just a very high level, brief overview of our calendar. We're going to talk about the district's approach to our budget development for 2022-23. We're going to talk a little bit about our priorities, and then we're going to talk about the board priorities discussion. And just to give you a little preview, we are very interested in what the boards are interested in pursuing in next year's budget development. And we have a question for you of what you would like to prioritize in that budget development. We are open to answers to that question this session, but we don't need any answers until the next time we meet. So we want to give you as much time as you need to think about what you want to prioritize for the next budget development. And we're open to input at any time. So again, a brief overview of our budget process. We're giving you today in October this preview, and we're opening this discussion of budget priorities, and we're looking to close that discussion or at least have some input by December. We will come back to the boards with a financial forecast in January and March timeframe. And there's I think there's two limiting date factors to our budget development. So for the new urban district, we have to supply that approved budget to the Multnomah County Tax Supervising and Conservation Commission, TSCC, by May 15th. And so we need that specific budget approved sometime in April so that we can supply that to the TSCC by May 15th. Other than that, we're going to follow the same schedule, the regular schedule that we have followed in the past with the budget development. We're looking for these boards who are in attendance today to tentatively approve their budget in the May timeframe, and then have adoption of the new urban district and the other districts in the June timeframe. And the staff calendar mimics the board calendar. Any questions on the calendar before we move on? Okay, I'll keep going. So our approach, the staff approach to developing the budget for 2022-23 is to maintain essential services and continue our delivery of service at our current levels. That includes filling any authorized vacant positions, and we have a small handful of those. And this indicator that I'm showing on the screen here, the Portland area 12-month consumer price index, is just an indicator. It doesn't have really any bearing on the budget development for next year. I'm sure we'll talk about our personnel services and our budget development. I just wanted all the stakeholders to understand that the Portland area, the Bureau of Labor Statistics has published a September to September consumer price index indicating that prices of common goods and services has risen 5% since last September. So I just wanted to share that with the group before we move on. Also in our budget approach is to continue our current ORS 550 priorities and objectives, and investing in our existing infrastructure as we always do, and plan and prepare for future infrastructure. And I know that that work is going on in earnest currently. And prioritize any budget proposals that we receive from staff under our existing priorities and also the new district scope. Our current priorities, this is just a very high level I think we have plans to share a little bit more detail on this in the future, but our current priorities include, of course, continuing our district's flood risk prevention and conveyance efforts, and also under the new district, adopting our new revenue model hopefully in early 2022 calendar year, enhancing internal systems and technology, and also investing in the equity related actions, procurement, hiring, training, and so forth. This is the last slide that I have for our current priorities. So when we talk about the new ORS 550 responsibilities, that new scope of work for the new urban district, part of our priorities is stakeholder outreach regarding the new district and building those stakeholder relationships and collaboration and addressing the houselessness issues, which includes enhancing the safety of our operations folks. With that, this is our question for the boards. What other specific items or initiatives do the boards wish to pursue within the fiscal year 2022-23 budget build? And again, we are open to input now, but we will come back to the boards and ask us the same question and facilitate a conversation at our next meeting.
I'll just share, it's my goal to try and get your additional priorities on the table so I can work with our team to try and include those in the proposed budget that you'll see later in the spring. So knowing them now helps us reflect your priorities as the leaders of this organization, or these organizations, I should say, excuse me.
And you're asking for input today?
If you have any, but we recognize it's new and you haven't seen a forecast, candidly with the 10% assessment increase cap and our capital needs, there's not a lot of fund money for us to take on new priorities, but it's really helpful for me to know if you have them, because we'll look for existing revenues that we can use to deploy in those areas. So
my two biggest things is, one is, what is inflation going to do to both material costs and labor costs? And then two, what is the houseless issues and security needs? How is that going to contribute? I don't know those answers, but I suspect those are areas that we'll have to contend with as a board to approve budgetary items for.
Yeah, and those are certainly priorities that we're looking at now and are trying to build into our assumptions going forward.
And I'll just, since you're looking for feedback, I'll say that the prioritizing budget proposals under the existing and new district scope, this idea of accelerating towards the new district, I think is great. I think it's going to make all our lives easier, and we could do that sooner rather than later. It's just amazing. So, so I support that approach.
I have a couple comments, and I've said this before to, I don't know, whenever I get the opportunity. I come at it from more the how MCDD has contributed to community programs, and I can use my own personal experience. I do the Vanport place marking project, and we put signs up to remember Vanport, and it falls into like cultural resources. But, and Corky's on our board, so he is familiar with me saying these things. There are signs in the ground, and they haven't been done for 72 years. And if they have to wait 2 more years because we don't get funding, MCD has historically contributed to that. I would rather see that funding go to houselessness support that supports all the other priorities of keeping our staff safe, being able to solve a far bigger problem than no wooden signs at PIR for Vanport. So I don't know how those, and I don't know if it's a priority and a question. Jim and Evan are familiar with me saying this, but how those funds are, I think in the budget, and I don't remember the exact figures, but there was a sum of money to give to programs that were equity-based programs that provided information, but they weren't really tied to flood safety, staff safety, maintenance, and houselessness. And so there are programs in North Portland, and I'll mention one, Neighbors Helping Neighbors, who one man in Kenton enlists houseless individuals to go around and pick up garbage. He always needs some kind of repairs to his trucks, trash bag, those kinds of things. So that if we're going to support community programs, I would like to see the support that go to support those, or with Cascadia Health, because the more money that they have will be the more people that will be rescued from a bad situation that are living along the levee. And so my priority is more to either explore how those funds, maybe a subcommittee of this committee, to prioritize how that money is allocated. It's never been clear to me how they decide. In all transparency and honesty, I've always felt kind of guilty because I have a connection. So I know that they gave the money away, and I asked for the money and got the $1,000 support. I'm not going to say it wasn't the best use of money because it goes to a good cause, but right now there are other things that are more quote unquote good to serve the people that we serve. So that's my little soapbox speech about how we prioritize and use that money that's already in the budget, I believe, but I don't know the amount of money and how it will be decided to be spent.
So if you're, so yes, there's money in the budget for last fiscal year that you all approved. It is a teeny tiny amount per district. And Mary Helen, you and I have had multiple conversations about how we decide and when it gets decided and what the priorities are. And we've put language on our website about it to try to improve transparency. So we can continue to talk about those things. I'll be honest with you. I don't think that the 4 districts, with the amount of money that they're giving away, should have another committee. If the new district wants to talk about meaningful investments in the community, like big investments in the community, then there's all sorts of cool public process that we can do around that. But we staff a lot of boards and a lot of committees, and that takes away from the other work that we can do to speed up our move towards the new district. If we were giving away even $10,000, I might feel differently about that. But combined, it's like $7,500 between the 4 districts. So we're not giving away a lot of money.
I understood from Karen Carrillo that it was a larger amount of money. I don't want to make any more burden on people to have to be on subcommittees, but just to give you a reference point, $1,000 would be huge to Neighbors Helping Neighbors. It would be huge to Cascadia. So
we do give to Cascadia.
I understand that. But I'm just saying that much more money would be that much more help. And, Neighbors Helping Neighbors, he spends over $2,000 a month on trash bags. So yeah. So I mean, I'm not going to get into the weeds on that, but I just think that with our focus and priorities, and that was what we were supposed to say, I would like to see that money go to programs that fit more with houseless, that could assist Cascadia, all of those things. Because Cascadia calls Terrence in Kenton and has him come pick up the garbage. So if we can support those efforts, even if it's $1,000 or $5,000, that was my point in all of this.
Yeah, and I think I definitely think we can talk about how we align the little bit that we give away, like align that better. I just wanted to emphasize for this group that it's a really tiny amount of money. And I think perhaps the number was amplified last year because we were involved in a project at NAIA to help improve their campus and do some drainage related improvements out by the slough. And that was like a $20,000 project, I believe. So it bumped things up quite a lot. But our true sort of just charitable giving is much smaller than that.
Thank you. Looks like we have a couple more questions here. I didn't see the order they came in. So James, I'm going to start with you.
Great. Thank you, Ben. Thank you. Nice presentation. I appreciate the work on this. I just want to say, and other Penn 1 board members, please chime in if I'm not in alignment with your thinking. The past budget process has been great. There's been early engagement, lots of touch points, and so please keep that up. It's been as good as it can be from my perspective. I think Penn 1, we've done a lot to raise revenues around the PIR pump station, the drainage master plan, supporting operations in terms of safety, fall protection. My goal would be to stay the course on the things we're already doing, because we're really positioning our assets to be in better shape. And that's where we want to be as we dissolve Penn 1. And so I really want to stay the course and hold the line. I do want to include in that anything that relates to staff investments in staff, investments in staff training and safety, just because that's the backbone of the organization. And then in terms of knowing things early, there may be pain points or for the Penn 1 budget, things we need to make decisions on. So the more lead time as you look at the January forecast, if you're seeing pain points in this year's budget, how the budget is playing out for us and its implications for next year, I would really like to know as early as we can either what revenues we might need to raise for next year or what services we might need to reduce. But again, thanks for bringing this to us early, and thanks for the great job you've done in the past.
Thanks, Val.
I just want to add my, Val Humble Penn 2. I want to add my voice to the expectation that we're probably going to end up spending more for the houseless problem. So that is one of my expectations. For priorities that my mind keeps returning to, the repair of the outfall pipe on our 13th Street pump station, but that's already in our capital plan. So that's what's on my mind. Thank you.
Thanks, Val. Any other questions? But also just, even if we don't have time to get to in-depth questions, feel free to reach out to the MCDD staff with comments, suggestions, questions, priorities from your different districts to make sure that we're adequately covering everything that needs to get done next year. And I concur on staff. I would add staff retention as one of the #1 items on that list. Anything else from the group? All right, good job, Ben, on your first presentation here, at least in front of the board, and welcome on board to the MCDD team. We're looking forward to working with you.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Thank you for the feedback, everyone. That was super helpful.
All right, looks like we're on item F, which is civil rights and non-discrimination policy adoption. Brian, I believe you're up.
Thank you. And Emily, if you mind putting up the slide while you're already on it, way to go. Okay, 1 second while I get oriented here and we get presenting. So just a second. All right. I've met most of you, but if anyone's new, my name's Brian Eberhardt, he, him pronouns. I'm a project manager here at MCDD. I am today going to bring forward to you a project or a process that I'm helping kind of put some energy into to support the public affairs and legal team on creating some structures for public accommodations and having a process for non-discrimination for people from the outside to be able to better access our services and programs. There is in your board packet a policy within some resolutions. So next slide, if you don't mind, Emily. So you know what's coming. This is the request. I'm not asking you to make a vote until I share more information, but just so it's on your mind as you're reviewing the information that I'm sharing today. We have a resolution to have each of you, if you agree, to adopt the non-discrimination policy in the resolution. Next slide. A little bit of background, why are we bringing this to you today? Briefly, so for everyone to know, you probably already do, but the public has a right to access reasonable accommodations if they want to enjoy or participate in our programs or services or a public process. And when we were doing some comparison of our policies and administrative practices to our regional partners, we realized that we do not have a non-discrimination policy related to public accommodation that's been approved by the boards. Next slide, if you don't mind. So the policy we've brought before you, which has been reviewed by our legal team, the goal was to align with best practices and legal requirements. It outlines the applicable laws that apply to public services without discrimination and providing them to all people, regardless of disability or language gaps. And it also directs our executive director to encourage our staff to create administrative processes that will help to support us if we get requests or complaints from the public. Next slide. The things that it asks for specifically, in case you haven't read it or it's not fresh on your mind, is to designate staff to carry out these laws. Right now, if someone makes a request, we're obligated by law to respond to it. We just don't have as formal of a procedure around it in place. So this kind of encourages us to designate like who's going to be on point for the first point of contact, who's going to do the review, how do we do things. Creates a procedure about receiving reasonable accommodations. So if someone says, hey, I want to be a part of that meeting, and but I have a limited vision capacity, or maybe English is not my first language, someone can make that request and we could respond appropriately. Someone could also make a complaint if they felt like they were discriminated against for a host of reasons that are outlined in the policy. We want to process for that in a form so people can easily participate and make that complaint so we can review internally and respond accordingly. And lastly, it encourages us to create a language access plan to help people where they have limited English proficiency to be able to better access our programs and services. Next slide. So briefly on impacts, as I mentioned earlier, we do not really have a very formal structure if someone were to make a request right now. So what this would do is help create more structure, more capacity dedicated towards it, and kind of also working towards being better at this over time. So right now we have not been getting, to my knowledge, at least from talking to other staff, we've been not been getting any requests for public accommodation or complaints, which is great. So we're not missing the mark, but we'd like to make it more accessible for people if they did want to engage with us and just didn't know how to do it. Make it people more aware of how to approach us and what they're allowed to do by law. Next page. So what does this mean for the short term? We are going to be creating a non-discrimination web page, both in English and in Spanish, that has our forms, our policies, and more information on how to request a reasonable accommodation or submit a complaint to the districts. We also intend to make forms and policies available to the public at our front desk and the places where we might interface with the public on this. If someone said, hey, I'd like to participate in this way, having those available for staff and training staff on how to help people be successful in making requests or complaints. Next slide. And we'll also be posting physical notices as well as on social media for people who can, if they happen to be in our break room or at our front desk or interacting with our ops team, to be able to notice that this option is available to them. And then probably even more importantly is like if people are aware of it, making sure that we have the processes, so the contracts and the local price agreements to be able to fulfill requirements such as translation services or interpretation services. So if the request comes in, we can be responsive and hopefully meet those needs quickly. Next slide. Yeah, so that's a quick overview. I know it was fast, lots of information. Just in general, the goal is to align with best practices and bring us up into kind of matching our partners and our requirements legally. So any questions before we move to a motion?
Frank, just a clarification for me. Is this particular to MCDD operations, or would it be able to be applicable to the individual boards now and urban flood safety as we do recruitments or replacements, or how does that, because I don't think there's anything in place now that we have to do anything if we, replace a board member in a district or in the urban flood safety water quality district, but it sounds like a good policy for those entities.
I'm not quite sure I understand the question, Mary Helen, and I don't mean to be dense.
Let me try again. Would this be
sorry.
applicable? Is this just applicable to current operations that staff operate under? So MCD serving staff, urban flood safety, or is it applicable to the different districts in how we operate? Not necessarily separate from, but I'm just thinking that how do we, I'm going to use an example. We have a landowner meeting tonight. I'm betting that not very many people will attend, but how well would this policy have maybe increased attendance if people, because a lot of people don't even know what the drainage district is. And so how those two will interrelate.
I can try to answer that.
Evan or Hong would both be great candidates for a response. I'll cede the floor.
All right. So this motion that Brian is bringing to you today, it will be applicable to all boards. Each board has its version of the resolution. In particular to Brian's resolution, it addresses civil rights and non-discrimination accommodations, which are required by law that we need to provide because we're going to be providing public meetings, public forums. So what Brian is presenting to you are mechanisms to increase equitable participation at these meetings or for translation services. Following Brian, I will be presenting to non-MCDD boards a DEI policy that will be, I think, more aligned with your question, Mary Helen.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I would also add, Mary Helen, that this policy will really will help us sort of be aspirational in aiming towards what is very much best practice with other governmental entities in the area around our public meetings. I don't expect that at first it will have impact in terms of participation for our meetings, but I think that it is one step in a lot of different things that we're doing to build towards that better participation. Just one example, one of our staff had a meeting not that long ago where a translator was requested, and it was the meeting with a potential partner. It was a two last minute of a request for us to figure out how to jump on board an existing contract to get a translator. But having this policy in place, we can begin to make that more of a priority and ensure that we do have those types of resources, that we can put that on our public meeting invites, so that if people do participate, there is a way for them to ask for accommodations. And then that will hopefully make it easier as we build more partnerships and more relationships for more people to participate in the meetings, if that makes sense.
Yes, and I'm fully supportive of this, and I want to stand on a soapbox and say this is a great advancement. And as I say, cheer on. So anything along these lines to be able to get the information out to people that say drainage district, that's a levy, all those kinds of things that don't know to even ask. So this is huge. I really support it. And thank you for all the work that went into it.
Thank you, Mary Helen. Thank you, Evan, for responding, and Hong as well. I see Tom's hand is up if that question has been addressed.
No, Brian, thank you for your work on this, and thanks for reporting that there was no complaints or actions against SDIC or any of the districts. That was good to hear. So this is more of a preemptive, showing our positive support of this effort. On the resolution, Exhibit A, you identify compliance with City of Portland code. Is that necessary for SDIC? Or is this just an expectation you want to meet that threshold in addition? Because
That's a great
SDIC
question.
doesn't operate in the city of Portland.
That's fair. Yeah, there are multiple cities. Kelly or Hong, as far as the drafting, I'm not sure if either of you are, I see Hong, but I'm not sure if Kelly's on the call. Kelly helped to draft this resolution, so.
I'm
it
on
may
the
be
call.
that we
I
need
don't
to add some
recall.
other
I
cities.
don't recall what changes that we made to SDICs because I think it did not go out in the packet.
Emily shared it.
Oh, okay, good. So we can take that part out of the general policy. I think to some extent we were trying to make everything uniform so that we're not trying to, so that staff aren't trying to have to meet different standards in each district when these things come up. So that was certainly part of the thinking. And for the districts that do exist in the city, we are required to follow those for meetings that happen within that jurisdiction. So, and we didn't see any issue with following those. And so if you prefer that we take it out, we definitely can, but there is some value to uniformity for staff.
Yeah, I would leave this for discussion with the board. I don't think SDIC wants to take on additional obligations than what's required. So Ken or Tanny, if you have any comments.
I think it's a really good point, Tom. I think maybe we can approve the resolution subject to change, striking that since it's the district's not located within the city of Portland.
Okay, we'll have staff make that change before it goes out for signature.
And I will just add that Metro and Tom, I'm sure the county and other public jurisdictions have similar policies just to make sure that somebody with a visual issue or a mobility issue or a hearing issue has a really clear process so that they can participate effectively. So we're just trying to catch up with where everybody else is.
So to the extent that there is a revision to the specific local jurisdiction, perhaps, I don't know if it's necessary to also look then at what the city of Gresham or the city of Troutdale within which SDIC serve, what their requirements are. So.
I think it can the substitute local jurisdiction.
Yeah, maybe that's
probably the easiest fix now. All right, any other questions? And then we can move on to the resolution.
And I did see Nancy's question pop up. I mean, at some point, those are nice reference points to the city of Portland or Gresham or somebody else, but it's not required for us to compare to their particular approach. So it may be possible for just to adopt the general language and remove any reference to a specific other jurisdiction and still be successful with our intent, which is to make sure that anybody who wants to participate has an opportunity to and knows how to gain access.
Yeah, or maybe you could just put it state, local, and federal.
Yeah.
Laws.
Yeah, that's helpful because MCDD includes Gresham and.
Yeah.
Both.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ken, for the suggestion. That's helpful.
So Hong, Kelly, does that mean that we can still bring this forward today for resolution, or do we need to have a revision and bring it back? I'm not quite sure the process.
I would like to.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, if I believe so, we worked with outside counsel on this, and I don't know that we specifically asked about the other jurisdictions and any requirements that they might have, but I think Ken's suggestion to change the language to refer to the applicable local jurisdiction is a good fix. And so I think if the districts just pass with that caveat, then we'll make that change for all of them.
So we're sort of a verbal revision, then we'll implement it in the written form. Okay. Sounds good. I also wanted to share with the group that this, once the 4 districts, assuming you approve, we'll be bringing this to the urban district as well for them to approve afterwards. So that's like a next step for me in this process as well.
Great, thanks, Brian. Good job on this, and this is great to get this out on writing and policy, and appreciate all the hard work on this. With that, we need to move along, given our timelines here. Any other questions? Else I'm going to send this out to resolution. All right, here, seeing no hands and hearing nobody, let's proceed with the resolutions. Let's again start with Pen 1.
Thank you, Brian. Nice job. Annalisa or Jeff, do I have a motion?
So I move that Penn 1 adopt resolution 2-21-09-01, adopting a non-discrimination policy for public accommodation.
Great, thank you, Annalisa. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Jeff. And we'll do a roll call vote. Annalisa Kohler,
Aye.
Jeff Noodleman,
Aye.
James Allison. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Moving on to Pen 2.
I don't notice anything in the Penn 2 resolution that actually refers to the local jurisdictions, just FYI. Do I have a motion? This is Val Humble from Penn 2. Do I have a motion from a supervisor of Penn 2 for this resolution?
I'll do it because I'm really excited that I get to vote on this twice here and the urban flood safety. So I move to approve resolution R 2021, adopting a non-discrimination policy for public accommodation.
For Penn 2, right?
For Penn 2.
Thank you, Mary Helen. Do I have a second?
I'll second that. This is
Who- who-
Karen.
who's
Karen Myers, second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote. Karen, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Mary
I
Helen?
vote aye.
Okay, Leslie
I vote aye.
Sorry.
and Kathy Kellen
Aye.
and Val Humble votes aye. It's unanimous. Penn 2 passes the resolution 2021-09-01.
Great, thanks so much, Val. SDIC.
Yes, this is Tom. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve resolution number R 2021-09-01, adopting a non-discrimination policy for public accommodation.
I'll second. Oh, I'm sorry, wrong one. Too anxious.
Tanny is seconding it.
Tanny, did I hear a second?
Yes, you did.
I hear a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Tom Hansel, aye. Ken Anderton,
Ken Anderton, aye.
Annie Stephenson.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, MC to D, could I get a motion?
To approve resolution 2021-09-01, adopting a non-discrimination policy for MCDD.
And I'll second that one.
Thank you. And just for the recording, it broke up a little bit. So it was on resolution number R 2021-09-01, adopting non-discrimination policy for public accommodations, was a motion by Kenzie. And we'll do a roll call vote. Corky.
Aye.
Kenzie.
Aye.
Nancy.
Aye.
And Nikki.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries, unanimously carries. I believe we've covered everything on that one.
Hey, Ken, quick question. I noticed we did not make a motion with the amendment to the appendix. Is that assume that was in the motion?
I think we have that captured in the record, so.
Thank you. Thanks, Emily.
Thanks, Tom, for the clarification. And yeah, the recording captured that.
And we'll send out the revised versions. And if there's concerns about that from any of you, let us know and we can amend it. Thank you for working with us on that. I'm grateful.
Yes, thank you for your time today.
All right, Hong and Jim, looks like we're on to item G, resolution adopting a commitment to equity.
Sure, I'll just start or Jim, would you like to start?
No, please, Hong, thank you.
Okay, I'll just start with the introduction, the technical information about this resolution, and Jim can add to his grand plan of moving forward the DEI implementation. This resolution is addressed to just the non-MCDD boards, Penn 1, Penn 2, and SDIC. And the resolution follows on the foot of efforts by MCDD last year, or maybe a few months ago, several months ago, in which MCDD passed a DEI policy. And that policy and set up a framework to develop a DEI implementation plan. And a lot of it dealt with, some of it, a portion of it dealt with its administration of staff and at the MCDD administrative level. This proposed version that we are presenting to Pen 1, Pen 2, and SDIC stripped out all of the provisions that apply to staff and left in it a sort of aspirational policy positions that reflect best practices that are going to be helpful in your legislative lobbying efforts to try to procure federal funding, because it will allow us to harmonize what we do to be consistent with the DEI implementation that we are about to take on or have been taking on at the administrative level. But this is a policy statement for the board that's going to help us do the work that we do across the board. So with that, there are resolutions that I see that Emily did send out individual resolutions to the board. And I will ask Jim to provide his, I think he's got some great ideas and great plan on how this is going to impact the work that we do for you as an administrator of your district.
I'll try and be brief. Thank you, Hong, first for helping pull the resolutions together. During the interview process to hire me, all the boards made it clear that equity was a really top priority. And so when I walked in the door, I took that very seriously. We lost Karen Carrillo to another awesome job last spring. And what it means is that, you know, we sort of slowed down. And so I'm excited to really pick up the mantle and run with it. And the MCDD board policy calls on your staff to develop an equity action plan. And it seemed really important to me, for the staff and for the community that we serve, that all the boards adopt something consistent with that policy. As you know, we are working really hard to establish stronger relationships with community-based organizations and historically underserved communities. And having this policy in place demonstrates a commitment to the work that I think will really help us improve those relationships and also improve the way we operate in terms of removing barriers for people who deserve equity in the services that we provide. So for me, this has a really important punctuation to it and a really important message point as we try and really expand the extent and nature of the partnerships that we have with the community. So it feels important to me. I recognize that you haven't had a chance to discuss it. And so if there are concerns, we really entertain a conversation about those, but we're hopeful that you agree with us that this is a key priority for our community. So with that, we are also starting, I think it's next week, we have an equity consultant coming in and beginning work with the executive and management teams to start to build out that equity action plan that the MCDD policy calls for. So we also have solicited ideas from the team for what we're calling sort of early actions around equity, and we hope to have those assembled here in the next couple of weeks. We'll see what we can get done with our existing capacity, but we're excited to make progress on this.
Thanks, Jim. Any questions?
This is Kathy. I just want to say it's really nice to see this. I know there had been a lot of momentum before Karen left, and I'm happy to see it picked up again and continued.
Thanks, Kathy. Yeah.
Just a question. So I see SDIC, we don't necessarily have a workforce. And I see that term, and I know MCDD staff, I feel like there are staff, but is this the right vehicle, or should we be using our agreements with MCDD to solidify these expectations? I don't know if the resolution is the right path, or put it into the expectations in our agreement with that MCDD. So it's just, I don't know, it's a nuance to me.
Yeah, I think it's if it's coming from a board level at a resolution level, Tom, I think that will direct what we do under the IGA. The IGA has, and we can add to the IGA this specific reference to this resolution, but I think if it comes from the top down, I think there's more consistency there.
Yeah, I think that's really thoughtful, Tom, and I appreciate your attention to those things. I wonder if it's a belt and suspenders type of thing. Let's do this and let's look at the IGA to make sure we're really making progress on this. I think we have a lot of work to do within our culture and based on the history of these organizations. So I'm looking for every angle I can work to continue to make us more equitable.
Thank you, Tom, and just a comment as a SDIC board member. I think I'm just looking at it, and it seems like it's more of a policy statement in terms of how we want to operate and how we want our contractors to operate. But maybe that's a good add is SDIC and its contractors, which would include MCDD. And I know, I believe MCD is referenced, but any contracts, like say even Brian Sheets' contract, maybe it should include that.
I like that suggestion, Ken. Thank you.
My couple credits of legal work is paying off in college today. So, all right. Any other questions? If not, I think we'll get to the vote. And this is.
I had. Yeah,
you got a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Sorry.
Yeah, I had one. Yeah, I appreciate everybody's comments, but to some degree, and I won't be a lawyer for a minute, I think we're overthinking it. The comment that, words have meaning, absolutely, or else we wouldn't even be talking about this. But the comment that it's a policy, it's a vision, I read this thing, I read it twice, and I take away is just be good people. That's what the policy is. And in anything, everything we do as a district and as supervisors, board members, when we approve anything, when we are listening to budgets, when we are doing anything, we are charged with doing so with an equity lens. Many of our own companies, many boards we serve on, everybody's jumping on the DEI wagon, hooray, but it means nothing unless we all embrace it. So I applaud, the district for coming forward with this. I think the words are great. I think it's something that is achievable, within the district structure. And I don't think we need to wordsmith it to get to a point to this particular contract or that particular episode. We don't know who's going to be knocking on our door, right? But we do know that going forward, regardless whose door we knock on, regardless who knocks on our door, let's just do it with open eyes towards the past, towards the present, towards the future. So, thanks.
Thanks, Jeff. James?
Thanks, Jeff. You answered half my question. I had time to read it and I'm very comfortable with it and I applaud the work. I just want to make sure the board members present have had time to read it so that they are supportive. I am comfortable taking a vote with 3 of our 5 members. Claudio had to sign off, but I just want to make sure that Jeff and Lisa have had a chance to read it and they feel comfortable voting with just barely the quorum we have.
I'm okay.
Thank you.
All right. Doesn't look like there's any other hands up. How about we move on to the resolution then, Pen 1.
We have a motion, please.
Yeah, James, I move to approve resolution R2021-10-01, adopting a commitment to equity through the formation of a diversity, equity, and inclusion program.
I'll second that.
Great, thank you. Annalisa, do roll call vote. Annalisa Kohler.
Aye.
Jeff Noodleman.
Aye.
James Allison, I vote aye. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. And now pen 2.
This is Val Humble for Pen 2. Do I have a motion regarding this resolution?
Yes,
Mary Helen?
that what? Yeah, I can make the motion. You just said, does everybody have the
Oh.
resolution? Okay, I move to approve resolution R2 or R 2021-10-01, adopting a commitment to equity through the formation of a diversity, equity, and inclusion program.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I second that. This is Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy. Any discussion? Roll call
You
vote.
know, can I just make a comment?
Yes.
I very much appreciate Jeff's comments about wards, and just another conversation earlier today. I was in a similar situation with state funding agency, and we spoke about having to tell people how to be a good person. And those words were just right out of Jeff's. So it's not just us, it's, you know, other organizations, and I marvel at that too. So I think this is a great step to remind us how we all should act.
Roll call vote. Karen, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Mary Helen, how do you vote?
Aye.
Leslie, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Kathy?
Aye.
And Val Humble votes aye. It's unanimous. Pen 2 passes resolution R2021-10-01. Thank you.
Thank you, Val. SDIC.
Yeah, I'll entertain a motion on the resolution 2021-10-01.
Mr. Chair, I just had
Yeah,
a
go ahead.
couple of questions, and I was wondering, could we just table this to an SDIC meeting? That'd be possible? I agree with everything that's been said and I support it. I just want to understand a little bit more.
Hong, is there any problem if we delay this?
There is no problem.
Okay. I'm fine with that, Tanny. So some sort of workshop is what you're thinking?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Ken, any comments?
No, I'm fine with it, given we just got the language this morning, so we want to talk more, have more time to talk since we're constrained on time today. That's fine.
Great. So SDIC will do a workshop on this topic and carry it into an SDIC meeting. Thanks, Danny. Great suggestion.
Great. Thank you.
If I may just echo that, I know these are hard topics, so I just appreciate people speaking up when they're not ready. It's really important that we hear everyone. So thank you, everyone. And thank you, Tanny. And we want to make sure you're comfortable with what we're doing.
Thank you, Jim.
Yes, thank you very much. And I think we're done with this topic with item G. Moving on to H on USACE PMLS. That's a mouthful there. Mark, you're on.
Okay. Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
And good morning to you too. This is Jamie.
Yeah, I'll let you kick us off, Jamie, please.
Yeah, if you want to go ahead and share your screen, Mark, with the slides.
Yep.
So as we've said at the last few format meetings, we're going to be coming to you every month or every time we have a format meeting with an update on where we are with the PMLS project. So today we have a fairly brief update for you, but wanted to come and bring some information to you about just where we are in the process and a little bit more detail about the City of Portland Memorandum of Understanding that we introduced to you at our meeting last time. So Mark, the slides were up and now they're gone.
There we go. Okay. I thought I was sharing the wrong screen. My apologies there. So,
perfect. Yep, that's right. You want to go ahead and go to the next slide?
There we go.
Great.
Having a technology day today, everyone. Sorry.
No worries. So we have just, like I said, a few items to update you on. Mark has a little bit to share with you about just the overall project update and a little bit of feedback that he's received about the modeling. And then we have a brief revenue update from Colin. And then a partner collaboration, City of Portland MOU, a little bit deeper dive there. We've got Nancy and Rochelle with the City of Portland who will be helping Mark with that agenda item. And then just next steps and where we're going, what you can expect at our next meeting. So you want to go to the next slide and we'll look at something that's familiar to everybody. So the 18-month timeline and decisions, you can see we're here in the fall of 2021. At our last meeting, we introduced the Portland MOU. Today, we're taking a deeper dive about where that's at, and then a continuing conversation about funding options. You heard a little bit earlier in the meeting today from Julie and from Evan about advocacy on the federal side and where things are at for federal funding. So we won't be talking about that as part of Mark and my presentation today. And so Mark, for other updates, I think you had one other update before we get into the modeling, right?
I think, yeah, there is not much to update on the study. We're just waiting for that final review at the Office of Management Budget and ASA. We do have a new project manager at the Corps, and we'll be taking them out to see the system next week. So continuing to forge relationships, keep those relationships fresh with our Corps partners.
Perfect. And then we'll just go ahead and move on to the modeling feedback.
Yeah. So I think the question is just, did we meet the mail? The boards asked for more details on the economic benefits modeling and the life loss modeling. And we don't expect, we actually don't have very much time this morning to go into a discussion, but we certainly will take any questions that we can bring back to you. If there's anything else that is missing from your understanding, or if if we can do anything else to improve your knowledge of what methods were used to conduct that the modeling that informed the final plan. Okay, I think that's a great sign, because there's pencils aren't down until the end of the meeting, or they're never really down. You're always welcome to ask more questions, but it sounds like we met the need, and we're certainly happy to refine things more. And that we did push out a kind of a slightly updated version of that document. We actually got the Corps to weigh in and kind of put their finishing touches on it, just to make sure that everything was completely accurate and suitable for public sharing. So if you do want to share that overview document, it is publicly shareable. Okay.
Okay, we'll move on to revenue update. And I think, Mark, were you going to start off and then hand it to Colin?
I'm just going to give it straight to Colin. We don't have much of an update, so I'll let you launch into that, Colin, if you're ready.
Thanks, Mark and Jamie. Just a quick update on an item that we've already discussed with you, but more of a status update than anything else. We are searching for external funding sources, especially state grant and loan opportunities, and identified the Business Oregon funding through the Special Public Works Fund and the Infrastructure Finance Authority being a really good option. During the 2019 session and again in the 2021 legislative session, we helped create a levy grant program. We just received an update from the Business Oregon Policy and Program Manager that they are almost complete, or they actually have completed the draft rulemaking on that. It's out for public comment right now, and if anyone is interested in reviewing that or providing comment, they are soliciting that through November 25th. Based on what they hear, they'll bring that to the IFA board in December. So really early next year, we should have the final rulemaking. And the opportunity here is about $2.5 million potential for each district. In the draft rulemaking, it looks like each one of the districts would be potentially eligible, but a big caveat here is there's $15 million total that would be up for a bond sale. And while it looks positive that they might be able to do that bond sale this spring, there is the possibility that it's either split or doesn't go forward, just like it didn't go forward in 2020. So we do need to plan for that contingency. I think Ben and Jim will be following up more on those types of options, but overall it's positive momentum. And the other caveat that's important to note is that of that $15 million, 40% of that can go to urban districts. And so we are, that would be a total of $6 million. And there might be other urban districts that would be looking for these levy funds. So again, it's positive, but we don't have anything conclusive, and we'll come back to you all when we actually have more information on it and how we might be able to leverage that opportunity. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions of what you just said. I'm more than willing to do a comment, but can you send me how to and maybe the talking points that you just said? And part of that, you said ISA. I'm into acronyms again. I don't know what ISA means or how I find it. It'd just be easier if you said, go here, make a comments, than me going and searching the Business Oregon site.
Yeah, and I can definitely, so yeah, IFA is the Infrastructure Finance Authority. And it's actually, the comments are a little bit different, and everyone is welcome to go in there, but it's proposed rulemaking. So it's really specific comments on what the words say or recommended changes, not necessarily support for it. So it's already been created through the last legislative session. So it's now sort of moving from law into how they actually enact the law. So that's the rulemaking. So there's really nothing really that we are requesting to be changed at this point. We're going to go through it again. We've been part of the conversation and actually creating the initial set of rules. Yeah, I guess it's more specific on if any individual or agency would want to go through those and provide specific comments.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the revenue options? And if you recall at the last meeting under the partner contributions, we had talked about the, working with with the city of Portland and others. And so there we go. And so that's the next topic is our MOU. Mark, do you want to go ahead and introduce that? And then we also have Nancy and Rochelle here to talk some more about that.
Great. Yeah, thanks. I did want to just, it looks like Nancy's here. I don't see Rochelle. Rochelle's here. I see Evan's nodding. Thanks. Yeah, I just want to give Nancy a chance to make a few opening remarks with their city hat on about this MOU discussion. Nancy, there we go.
Thanks, and actually I'll start with my MCDD hat on because as Julie Minerva was saying earlier, the unity and support with our partners is part of what makes our project really strong. So my ears perked up when she said that. It's exactly right, and this is a piece of that. So then, now I'm going to put my city hat on. And this MOU that we're doing, there's a lot of work within the city. We have different bureaus and it's hard to get all the bureaus to work together, but we've been working very hard over the last 2 years to get everyone up to speed and working together. This MOU helps us when we go to our city council in terms of having, showing that the bureaus are working with the districts, and there's some, there's a little bit of we need to keep working together as we go forward, because the Corps' interpretation of complying with local rules and regulations is perhaps different than ours. And I know there's a way we can thread the needle, and this allows us to do that. So you need anything else, Mark?
That's great. No, thanks very much. I just wanted to give you an opportunity. it's been a good start, I think, to work very collaboratively with the city. There's obviously going to be some issues down the road where we don't agree on or we have gaps on, but I think this is going to be a good process to work through those issues and be clear on them together before we step into negotiations with the Corps of Engineers in designing our PET agreement, so that we don't miss things because we didn't think about them up front. So I'm just going to talk really briefly. I know we're coming up on our time here, but next month you will see, and actually we expect prior to next month's format, you will see a draft copy of this MOU. We're extremely close on having a draft ready for viewing, but we didn't want to have anything, no wine before it's time. So you should see it very shortly, along with the resolution for the executive director to adopt it in substantially similar form. Although I don't expect very many changes, if any, to occur once we do show it to you. The MOU is non-binding, and essentially it just authorizes a task force that will develop solutions and recommendations after discussing all the various issues. There are a lot of elements to the plan within the city of Portland, and so I do want to preface this with this MOU is strictly between Pen 1, Pen 2, and MCDD, because SDIC does not overlap at all with the city of Portland's jurisdiction. And so I want to make that clear. And the most complex and least straightforward projects are within the city of Portland. So there are obviously some things to talk about. What we've done is develop this task force that will develop solutions, present them to our director here at MCDD, and the city will present, task force members will present to their bureau directors, both of which will make recommendations to their respective governing bodies, so the city council or you, the 3 drainage district boards. If there are any cost sharing or obligations that require them, they will put together recommendations for IGAs, and we expect to be developing those throughout the process, or sort of the skeleton of those throughout the process, and hope to start to button them up in the spring as we begin to develop the design agreement with the Corps. I'm gonna move on to what we hope to get out of it. Unless anyone has any clarifying questions, I'm gonna ask most of the questions to.
I just wanted to interject. We are supposed to be done by 12:45, hoping everyone can stay until 1, so we can get through the agenda. We're going to cut off 1 or 2 agenda items, but just wanted to see if we could get through this and one or two other.
Great, thanks. I will definitely try to get through this quickly. I'm not going to read through all these bullets. I tried to write a very expansive board memo that has all the details on this, but I wanted to give an opportunity to ask for any clarifying questions and just kind of summarize the intent. So there are 2 lists. There is a list of our needs, and there's a list of the city's needs. And you can read through them. I mean, I think primarily you've heard these talking points before. We talked about them last month. It revolves around sharing of financial resources. It revolves around easements and real estate discussions. It revolves around facilities that are in the project area that will be relocated, facilities that the city of Portland will be expected to maintain in the future. And because we're not going through a typical design review, because this is a core process, we need to make sure that the city is able to have enough weigh in on what those outcomes look like, so that they can be maintainable, and so the local authorities aren't left with something that they can't live with or maintain. We will look for support with community engagement. There's things like HDRW issues, the hazardous environmental contaminants issues, that look to see if the city has any insight on, all those sorts of things. Community coordination support on houseless issues as they relate to being able to maintain these levies. So as far as the city, a lot of these things overlap, just from a different perspective, of course. So again, real estate partnership and design review, and where we have gaps, we will look to develop complementary projects, recommendations for complementary projects and processes for better public engagement, things where the CORS process leaves us a little bit wanting as the local jurisdictions. And when I say that, I mean both the districts as well as the city in their efforts to reach out to their citizens. So I certainly will welcome any questions. I know we're running short on time. The next steps for this are for the MOU to come out. Obviously, you'll have plenty of opportunity to review them. And I do want to just emphasize that there's a bunch of bullets in terms of those needs that both sides want that are listed. There is not an exclusive list. The task force will define the full list of talking points, and there will be periodic updates with the board. So if there are issues that you feel like have not been discussed or aren't on the docket to be discussed, there will be time to inject them. We certainly want to worry about scope creep in those discussions, but I think that there's plenty of time. So if that list is not all inclusive, there's still time to add those as the task force begins its work. So we'll probably begin to assemble a task force. The city has the resources to begin the task force and staff. And so we want to not lose too much time getting it set up. And we will be presenting the resolution for approval in November. At the bottom of that timeline, that kind of that speaks to how this dovetails into the PED design agreement negotiation process. And it, of course, kind of the end goal is to have everything wrapped up and have all our expectations and things aligned prior to the projected start of PED next October. Okay, that is all I have for you all. Just want to make sure you don't have any questions. I threw a lot at you. I have a very boring memo that can provide you with more details if I didn't do a sufficient job.
Thank you, Mark and Jamie and Colin and Nancy on this one. Tell you what, since we're so short on time, why don't you email comments to Mark if you have them, questions, and then we can discuss those in the next meeting.
Mr. Chair, I just want to say thanks to the staff at the City of Portland for its efforts, but I also think it's important to acknowledge Metro, Port of Portland, Gresham, Fairview, Troutdale. All the staffs of those organizations are providing an extra lift to help all of this move forward. City scale is huge and complex, so the fact that they're investing this much time and extra resources in organizing their team so that we can serve the public better is notable and appreciated. So, but all the public agencies are really doing more than they need to help this enterprise be successful. So I think it's important for all of us to recognize that, from the county all the way down through to Fairview and Troutdale and everybody. They're really stepping up, and it's essential. So thank you all from the public sector side for your support.
Thanks, Jim. It's a big teamwork and trying to move us toward that goal. So we appreciate everyone working together. All right, we have the urban district update. Jim, you're
okay. Two minutes on that. We are moving ahead with efforts to coordinate with the urban board on some legislative technical amendments to the authorizing legislation for the urban district. The intent of those amendments is to give the urban board lots of options for how it can proceed to move forward with setting up the new utility and getting a more equitable and broader rate base installed. I'm happy to go into the details on that. There are really 5 things. We are making a lot of progress with community-based organizations and trying to get input and develop relationships around the new mandates for the urban district, those being cultural history, water quality through a watershed plan, resilience to climate change, and equity. So not quite ready to give you the details on that, but essentially we're trying to really partner with community-based organizations to help us flesh out what those programs might look like, and to make recommendations to the urban board on the appropriate level of investment for those. We are still looking for 2 board members for the urban district. So if any of you know anyone who might be interested, I would urge you to reach out to Mike Jordan or any of the urban board members. We are looking for people affiliated with not-for-profits with an interest in the floodplain, one with a nonprofit that has a connection to social justice issues. So if you have any suggestions or ideas, please let us know. We're anxious to fill those spots. We are moving ahead soon, I hope in the next few weeks, with an initiative to try and procure a public opinion research firm to help us with engagement across urban Multnomah County. We hope to have more for you on that soon. And Colin and his team with Echo Northwest had a good conversation with the Revenue Development Subcommittee earlier this week, and we're in the process of identifying all the potential revenue options and working with that subcommittee to narrow them down to a reasonable set that we can build into a model that we can then play with to see, okay, who's going to get impacted by different approaches to generating the revenue we need to operate our system. And I think based on the interest of time, I'm going to stop there. There's lots more I could say. If you have any interest at all, please just pick up the phone or type an email and I'll get back to you and give you more information.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it. Good update. And you're a quick talker. We appreciate that.
Lots of coffee.
All right, Carrie, I think you have an environmental policy update.
Do I forgot I had this spooky background, but now I won't have time to change it. Anyway, I have a quick update for you all. This isn't something we need a decision on, but last March I came to you and provided an overview of the environmental program priorities, the Columbia Slough floodplain and some of its natural history, and was directed to begin work on an environmental policy. I since worked with liaisons from each board, Nancy Hendrickson, James Allison, Kathy Kellen, and Tanny Stephenson to get their ideas on what the priorities and sideboards for our work in the environmental space would be. And at the same time, Director Middock came on and the pace for developing and transitioning to the new district really accelerated, as did the work for building out what environmental programming would look like for the purpose of supporting the revenue development process. So my update today is essentially to say that our work on long-term program goals, priorities for an environmental program has essentially moved over into the court of the new district. I will not intend to bring you draft policies for the historic boards because we're focusing our energy on moving forward those discussions with the stakeholders that Jim mentioned, and in order to move quickly towards getting the additional revenue to make those ambitious program goals a reality. So you take quick questions if there are any. That's it.
So I just have a really quick one. Does that mean we'll get updates in the urban updates, as opposed to individual updates in the in our format meetings?
Yes, it does. And also, of course, if there were things we were doing that we, felt had strategic or big financial implications for any of the districts, the existing environmental program is going to evolve, mature, continue to operate, and focus on our priorities, which include becoming more efficient and effective at navigating permitting and regulatory programs, using natural resource management like control of invasive species to achieve our goals, and partnerships and pilots to kind of add new environmental tools to our toolbox. So yes, Urban District will hear about it. Also, you will hear about updates and the program as it continues to evolve, and anything that we're feeling iffy about, if there is. But I feel like for the next year and a half, we can work within our existing authorities and grow and evolve the program as it is.
Yeah, I'll just add to that too, that just because we're not moving forward with an environmental policy for the existing drainage district, it doesn't mean that we're not doing environmental work. I mean, there are environmental requirements and natural resources mitigation measures that we're obligated to undertake as part of projects and programs. So we will continue to comply with the environmental law, and to the extent there are mitigation measures that allow us to join up with the new urban district's mission, that's where I think the work of Carrie and her team is going to really flourish.
I can hold the other update for next meeting.
Yeah, I think we can do that one via email. And then thank you, Carrie, for the update. And Emily had a couple new items for business. And so we're going to defer the item L, life along the Columbia series, and item K on the project update.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention Leslie Sawyer reached out and indicated that this will be her last meeting. She's planning to resign from the Penn 2 board. And so I just wanted to communicate that out. Thank her very much for her service, and let the Penn 2 board know that we'll be talking more about that between now and the next meeting. I'll be in communication for next steps on filling that seat. But thank you very much, Leslie, for all of your work.
Yes, thank you, Leslie.
Thank you, everyone, for all of your work.
It's really nice that you provided all that service. We're all really grateful. Thank you, Leslie.
And Leslie's probably the longest standing person in Penn 2 that's had interactions with the board. So really appreciate all your advocacy over the years, Leslie. And I'd say happy sailing to you, but I don't know if you get to do that in this weather.
Of course. Just got back from 10 days in the San Juans.
Nice.
Thanks, Leslie. And Emily, anything else? Looks like Penn 1 had to adjourn because they're out of members.
Are you then ready for Penn 2?
Yes.
This is Val Humble for Penn 2. Penn 2 is now adjourned.
SDIC?
This is Tom Hansel. SDIC is now adjourned.
And
Thanks all.
MCDD is now adjourned. And thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Take care.